So the Megalopolis trailer, the film, the trailer for Francis Ford Coppola's newest big bold passion project, the trailer's been pulled by distributor Lionsgate over using fake critic quotes. I have a quote here from a spokesperson from Lionsgate saying, quote, "Lionsgate is immediately recalling our trailer for Megalopolis. We offer our sincere apologies to the critics involved and to Francis Ford Coppola and American Zoetrope," which is Coppola's production company, "for this inexcusable error in our vetting process. We screwed up. We are sorry," end quote. By the time it was pulled down, it had already amassed like 1.3 million views. So, the damage had already been semi-done. And Deadline notes that, reports rather, that the film's team have cut ties with the marketing consultant, Eddie Egan. So what's the context for all this? So Megalopolis, like I said, the latest film, Francis Ford Coppola. It's a passion project that has been in the works since like the 1980s. And here's the Letterboxd blurb, just to give you kind of a sense of what the movie's all about. On Letterboxd, it reads, quote, "Genius artist Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, I think, seeks to leap the city of New Rome into a utopian, idealistic future, while his opposition, Mayor Franklin Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. Torn between them is a socialite, Julia Cicero, the mayor's daughter, whose love for Caesar has divided her loyalties, forcing her to discover what she truly believes humanity deserves," end quote. So really interesting idea. It's obviously Coppola really wrestling with some big, kind of socio-political concepts here. The critical reception has not been great, right? So it had some early critic screenings, and then eventually, I think it was May, it had it screened in competition at Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival in France. The current critic Rotten Tomatoes score is at 53%. So not very good, right? Kind of polarizing. 3.0, on Letterboxd has a 3.0 out of 5. And if you look at, usually on Letterboxd, you usually see kind of like a bell curve of the ratings. Megalopolis is, if you go look, it's like almost like flat. Like it's like almost has an equal distribution of every possible score. That's very polarizing. And again, it's polarized critics. So while you have that, you have some really positive reviews, like from IGN's 9 out of 10 review from Siddhant, I'm going to butcher this, Siddhant Adlaka, saying, quote, "Megalopolis is, for better or for worse, a profoundly personal vision whose wordy metaphors eventually give way to jaw-dropping transformations," end quote. So you have this weird critical divide. And that's a problem when 3 or 4 months before your movie's even releasing in theaters for general audiences, it already has a pretty bad critical reception. So then they released this trailer this past Wednesday, and the trailer featured quotes, right, from critics lambasting Coppola's other classic films like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. So the kind of messaging of the trailer is this suggestion that critics aren't all knowing and all powerful, that critics don't always know what's going to stand the test of time and become a classic. And the narration itself from Lawrence Fishburne, who I think is in the movie, the narration says in the beginning, quote, "True genius is often misunderstood," end quote, right? So this idea that, like, they're really leaning into the idea of, like, Coppola himself as a brand, we're going to kind of be tongue-in-cheek and pull all these quotes from people criticizing these films are considered some of the best, if not the best of all time, right? That's a really interesting marketing strategy. Like, kind of lean into the fact that it hasn't been getting good reviews and use it as a strength. But the issue is, it turns out that all of these quotes that were featured in this trailer can't be found in any of the reviews by the listed critics, right? So in the trailer, it references Roger Ebert, supposedly in his review for Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula film from the 90s. It claims Roger Ebert said about that film, quote, "a triumph over style over substance," end quote. This is actually the most accurate quote, because Ebert did say this, but not about Bram Stoker's Dracula. He said it about Batman 89. So that's the only one that is actually a quote from an actual review, even if it's misattributed to the wrong movie. But then you have something like Pauline Kael, which, you can, you should be able to see here up at the top, right above my head. In the trailer, it says that she said about The Godfather that it was, quote, "diminished by its artsiness," end quote. Not only is that Not only are those not words she ever wrote in a review, supposedly, IndieWire notes that she was one of The Godfather's biggest champions, right? As well as for its sequel. So not only is this not true, like, it actually kind of misrepresents how she actually feels about the movie. So obviously the reactions to this are everyone's dunking on Lionsgate and this trailer, right? So Owen Gleiberman is one of the critics cited. He's a Variety critic now, but I think in the 90s he wrote the review for Bram Stoker's Dracula for Entertainment Weekly. It incorrectly cites his 1992 review. He supposedly called the film a beautiful mess, which he did not say in his review. And he commented on this recently saying, quote, "Even if you're one of those people who don't like critics, we hardly deserve to have words put in our mouths. Then again, the trivial scandal of all of this is that the whole Megalopolis trailer is built on a false narrative. Critics loved The Godfather, and though Apocalypse Now was divisive, it received a lot of crucial critical support," end quote. So again, he's kind of pointing out that while it's an interesting marketing strategy, it's kind of ahistorical, because it would imply that these movies were kind of panned the way Megalopolis has been panned, and then later were reappraised. You may have had a couple of voices here and there not liking any of these films, but they were overwhelmingly positive. It's not just a retrospective acclaim. So this is just a really interesting story because it speaks to the use of critic quotes in trailers. Usually people are getting in trouble for putting fake positive quotes. But in any case, critic quotes in trailers have always been used in a misleading way. They're often either out of context, or they're from less than reputable critics who literally exist just to make quotes that will end up in trailers, or both, right? And this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Variety notes that back in 2000, Sony released a bunch of trailers with positive critic quotes from a critic named David Manning. It turned out Manning didn't even exist. He was made up by Sony's marketing team, and Sony even ended up having to refund $5 to anyone who was convinced to see one of these movies based on the false advertising, right? So, but even when it's real, again, it's usually cherry-picked. Variety's article about this story even had a whole paragraph being like, "We at Variety try really hard to make it so that our reviews can't be taken," like little sentences in our reviews can't be taken out of context. But oftentimes, again, you have people who intentionally are writing glowing reviews just to kind of boost their own profile, so that they will get used in trailers. I think within the critic community, they're called critic whores, right? But ultimately, it's like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, obviously, like, it's great in theory. Like I said, it's an interesting marketing strategy, but you need the actual quotes from real reviews to back it up, right? And what's really interesting, I think this just speaks, the reason why this happens is just out of laziness, because the Hollywood Reporter notes that some of these reviewers did say things that, if taken out of context, could have served a similar purpose. It wasn't that people were saying awful things, but there was real pull quotes you could have used that could have served a similar function. So many people speculated from the jump that these quotes were generated by AI. They probably just typed in, what were some negative reviews or pull quotes from these Coppola films, right? And Variety later reported that this was indeed the case. From their article, they said, quote, "Sources tell Variety it was not Lionsgate or Egan's intention to fabricate quotes, but was an error in properly vetting and fact-checking the phrases provided by the consultant. It appears that AI was used to generate the false quotes from the critics," end quote. So, again, it just goes to show that people are just lazy. How much money did this Eddie Egan fellow get paid to do this? Like, me and my fiancée Viviana, we have our own small business of, like, a marketing agency. We could have done 10 times better doing this. And we have no experience doing a film like, marketing for a film like this, right? So, it just again, speaks to the laziness of Hollywood, of business, and it's kind of funny if it wasn't so deceptive. So I'm just glad they got caught, right? The film, is still set to release September 27th, so about a month from now. And ultimately, it'll probably still be a critical commercial dud. I don't think this is going to do financially very well, and I don't see how you can go from having a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes to having a 94, right? So I'm still excited to see it because I love Coppola's work, and it seems like it's polarizing enough that, maybe I'll like it, right? So I don't know. I'm interested to see, what ends up happening with this film, but only time will tell.